Welcome back. So the first scenario was that you are going to let the user ask questions and you answer depending upon expecting the questions and the responses and sending the responses after you get the expected message. And the next scenario that I'm going to teach you is that you take control over the conversation and collect data from the user. So you would start by sending questions and getting answers, and just getting answers. Maybe you want to use them later, or you just want to talk to the user. So you are going to control the conversation by starting at the conversation with a question. And each time the user sends a message or a response, then you will immediately ask another question. So in order to accomplish that, inside the send button, what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to process the message. Instead, I'm going to create another function that will immediately ask another question after the user responds to the previous question. So what I'm going to create here is that first let's create an array of questions. So here questions to ask. And the structure of this array will also be an array of objects. And each object will have a question to ask the user, and it will also have the answer. And the answer will be supplied by the user. Answer. And we will be storing the answer to each question in that object. And the answer will be initially nothing. And the question, of course, will be whatever question you want to ask the user. Let's say, what's your name? What's your name? And the second object, let's just copy this and paste it a couple of times. 1, 2. And here we can say, how old are you? How old are you? What is your job title? And now we have an array of 3 objects. And now the most important part, which is creating a function that will continue asking the user each time the user responds. So here I'm going to create a function called ask questions. And as I told you, each time it's going to send the next question. So the first thing that it's going to start with question number 1. And how would we know that we are at question number 1, not 2 or 3? By using the user object. We can here create a counter that will be 0. And here, depending upon this counter, we will move from the first question to the next question. And each time we move, we increase this counter. So the first thing is that I'm going to use the set timeout. And after each time, we will ask a question after 1 second of the response, after 1 second of getting a response from the user. So here, 1 second. The function that will send the question to the user will be the chatbot send message. And then we access the questions to ask. And then we use the counter, which will be initially 0, user.counter, and then dot question, because we want to access the question. And the chatbot send message will get the job done by sending the question to the user. And that is not it, because we want to increase the counter after we ask a question. So here we need to increase the counter so that next time when we call the ask questions next time, we will ask the next question, not the same question. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to increase the counter by using user.counter plus plus to move on to the next question. So it's going to send the question, the first question, and then increase the counter. And the next time we call the ask question or questions, it's going to ask the next question because the counter would be increased. Let's here call it ask question because it's going to only ask one question, not questions. And we need to call this function from inside the add event listener, the click event listener that is on the button, because each time the user sends a message, we will ask the next question. So here, ask question. And one more thing is that we need to initially ask the first question, because if I save and refresh, nothing will happen. And the user will start by saying something, and we don't want that. Instead, we want to start asking questions immediately. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to call the ask question immediately. Let's just call it here, ask question, only one time. So this ask question will be executed only one time, and other times this ask question will be called each time the user clicks on the button, meaning that each time the user sends a message. Let's now refresh. And as you can see, I am immediately going to get what's your name, and then send. And I'm going to get the next question after I answer the previous one. How old are you? And so on and so forth. Each time I answer a question, I answer a question, I'm going to get the next question. But of course, these aren't enough. We need to add more questions, and the context also is very important. You can just ask general questions, or maybe you want to ask specific questions about specific topics, something like that.